Oh, we're live. Welcome, you guys, to the first series of African literary curators, as done by Africa in Dialogue. I am Joy Mogami, and so happy to have you guys here, Marcelle and Zaahida of Africa. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yay. Yes, so this series that we are doing is really so that we can celebrate, we can create spaces for African literary curators to share about the work of curating and the work of archiving and facilitating spaces, the transformation, the evolution of African literature wherever we are in the world, right?
Yeah. And we're right here in London.
Yeah.
The UK, and you're in Botswana. So it's really lovely that modern technology allows us to have these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely love conversation, which is the essence and core of African dialogue after all. But we will begin. I'm going to start with you guys sharing a bit more about yourselves and what you guys do with Africa. Then we'll come back.
So I guess Afrikult has moved and kind of we've been quite fluid with what we do. We started whilst we were studying, and initially Afrikult was just an online space where we wanted to share a lot of the knowledge that we'd learned from our studies with other young people who might want to know a bit more about African literature and maybe even more about their own roots. So it kind of started, initially as an online space. We then kind of, I guess, at the same time started dipping into conferences. So again, kind of staying within academic spaces, but very much kind of not being a typical like academic kind of very formal in our ways of presenting. And then our approach kind of completely changed, and we started doing workshops with schools and kind of approaching more festivals in like a more cultural and less highbrow academic sense of what we do. I think something that we're really passionate about, or the main core of all our work in these different spaces, is really sharing and widening access to knowledge about African literature, because unfortunately here in this country it can still be quite elitist, to actually really interrogate and have those conversations where it's more than maybe just something quite surface level, to actually really understand the diversity, or to even not even understand, but just get a glimpse of it. It's still quite an elitist thing, whereas actually if we'd had this knowledge a lot sooner, it wouldn't be that way. But things are slow to change, and we kind of see ourselves as part of that change.
And it's crazy because you even have to go into these kinds of elitist institutions to have access to that knowledge. So for us to be able to be working with with people within our communities and stuff, working with young people, it's really, I think it's added so much more value to doing what we do, and given more purpose to why we do what we do, if that makes sense.
No,
and what about you, Joy, with Africa in Dialogue?
I always say that I didn't start Africa in Dialogue with the idea that it's going to be a literary magazine. I actually remember someone calling it that. I was like, really? Is that what it was? Okay. Because for me, it was about conversations. It was about dialogue. I've always been interested in dialogues growing up. But the passion got really, really inspired from a dream. I actually dreamt interviewing someone, and then I woke up and I told her, oh, I dreamt that I interviewed you. She's like, yeah, you should do it then. And then we did the interview, and this was in 2008, 6 years ago. And I did the interview, and I was like, oh my God, I love it. I should do this again. And then I started a series with Botswana storytellers at the time. And it was just this amazing experience for me, and just how everyone was responding to it. I was like, there's something here. And I didn't have intentions of what it was that I was doing. The person that I interviewed was a writer, so the conversation was based on writing and and she happened to be from Zimbabwe, living in Botswana, so culture became part of that, and Africa became part of that, and it just formed itself. And so my love for literature was always there, but how I became a literary interviewer, it's just something that really happened because of that dream. A couple of years later, I just wouldn't get over how powerful curating and getting to know African writers, storytellers was. It really changed how I interacted with the literature, with the work itself. It really also broadened and expanded on what the work was saying, you know. In particular, for me, it was how I started to see the African country differently after having a conversation with someone who's from a different country like mine. And I was in India when they thought, "Can you should do this for Africa?" Like, oh, okay. And then I came back from India and I sat down. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this for Africa. The process of having the word Africa in dialogue was like an 8-month brainstorming where randomly I would think about it, but finally creating the website and reaching out to writers to have conversations with them. It took 8 months, and it wasn't an easy process actually. I don't know what I thought would happen, but like just getting someone to say yes, interview me. It took me, I think I asked like 13 people before someone said yes to me. You know? And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know what I was asking people. I just knew I wanted to talk to storytellers. And like you're saying, Zaahida, it just then started to transform by itself. I was kind of like a vessel. And then it just started to transform. And before I knew it, 3 months later, people said, a literary magazine. I'm like, really? But I received it. And that is the story of Africa and that, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like when you start a project, this has been something I'm constantly learning. And for people watching, yeah, we have to share it. To share earphones, so it may look a bit strange, but you don't mind sharing. No.
We've shared much more.
Oh, girl. Anyway, so you know, one thing that I'm constantly learning is the fact that you can start a project and you may have an idea of what this thing is going to be, and the idea that you have is actually limited. And when you start the thing, you then realize, oh, this is going to require so much more of me. And then you realize the seed that you've sown, it has a life of its own. So it's no longer you trying to control it to be this very thing, but actually it's like more like falling in line with, okay, what is it that this thing is trying to achieve, and what do I need to do to make that happen? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the thing that I'm constantly learning, is that act of surrender, of not trying to control it to be this thing and not wanting to give too much of myself, because that thing, when you give more and more of yourself, you are more invested in that project. And it's a very scary thing because it leaves you vulnerable and it leaves you frightened and scared, because you now feel more exposed. Because if it fails, you know, then you fail along with it. But failure is inevitable in the like long scheme of things, and it's one of the things as humans we're constantly fighting against. And I think that's one thing I'm constantly learning, that failure is a tool for me to know, okay, not that path, but this path. And I think I've definitely gotten a lot of that learning and training from the 5 years that we've been doing Afrikult.
Oh yeah, you cannot not learn anything if you're a curator, especially of African literature. There is so much that you can never predict what happens. Both good, really good, and also some really deeply stretching and unexpected, and things that you would never really predict, you know, which is something that we'll get into, what curating is really like in Africa, for African literature, really. When you're talking about how African dialogue, they're literally energies that are standalone, almost from you. You're just like the vessel. It literally tells you what it needs. For me, I don't know what your experience has been like, but I've literally had African dialogue. Well, not that it's like a real person, but just like it's saying, this is how I need to be expanding right now. and obviously become like an inspiration. I'm like, oh, I need to start doing book interviews. But I know now, after working with African Dialogue, that it's actually like an energy. So Elizabeth Gilbert, with her book Big Magic, she says that ideas actually exist in some plane of ideas, and ideas actually look for a human that they can partner up with. And it will find you, it will plant itself in you, and you would either receive it or reject it. But once you receive it, it comes with its own evolution plan. You are not really doing much except to just receive it and download it and do the physical aspect of it. And ever since I had that, it was like, that makes so much sense, because thinking about how African dialogue has evolved and expanded, I could have never predicted a lot of the things it has done. Its expansion is just, I would have never really came up with them. I know that it's from the essence of African dialogue. Do you guys connect? And when you think about also how you guys have expanded, what are the things that have been interesting, the expansions, interesting for you guys as you grew from the moment of inception to today, 5 years later? Wow. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Yeah, and to you too, from, I think you said the concepts came to you 6 years ago, right?
Yes, but African Dialogue is almost 3 years.
It's 3, yeah, no, I know. But yeah, no, so congratulations to you too. You saw it through, and you're seeing it through. It's all a process.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were going to say something.
I think we've had interesting kind of spurts of I guess innovation with what we do, and when we've kind of decided, okay, maybe this aspect isn't working, let's try this instead. But what you were saying about dreams really resonated with me, as Marcelle has often had dreams where she's been like, you'll never guess what, I had this dream, and then like however many months later it's actually come true.
Do you know what? But it was funny because it was even in times when we didn't know each other that well. So imagine someone's coming to you and they're saying, oh, I have a dream that we're going to be walking around East Africa. It's like, and you're just like, okay, crazy person. But you were very kind and accommodating.
It's nice to be dreamed about. Doesn't happen much.
But yeah, no, I think dreams can be a very powerful thing. Very powerful tool, because it's like an insight into the the subconscious and the psyche, and it can be a tool to answering questions that you've subconsciously been thinking over, questioning. It can also bring symbols, things that you're trying to piece together, and then okay, maybe this is what this situation is trying to tell me. And that can be communicated through dreams, I believe. And then sometimes you just have really random dreams, and that's okay.
Yeah. So what were the things that were coming up for you in the dreams and outside the dreams, and how they have manifested as the Afrikult that you guys are currently celebrating in 5 years?
I mean, did you want to talk about the dream, or?
I mean, it's just interesting that I'm pretty sure Marcelle's had 2 dreams and they've both come true that I can remember. You probably have more specifically about Afrikult, but those 2 things I think have been quite, prophetic in that they've come true.
Yeah, it's weird.
And we've grown in that direction. I think maybe there are other instances that have come about through quite intense pressure where we've had to shift and kind of think about, okay, well, this option is no longer available to us. We're going to go this way. And that's, I feel, when maybe the snowballing effect of, okay, well, we've created this thing and now it's kind of pulling us over here, and we're going to have to roll with it or not. And I think we've had like maybe in the last 3 years different circumstances where we've been presented with something similar to like growing pains, basically. And it's interesting how we've both responded and how we've supported each other through responding, because we respond to things quite differently. But again, when you have something that you've kind of created and it's pulling you in one way, knowing that we can both support each other with our different reactions has been very interesting, and I think contributed to where we are now. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yeah. And
do you want something specific?
I know, yeah, because I know you were asking a question also about expansion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think, like, just to build on even what Zaahida said about, you know, having like an idea of this is where you want this thing to go, and then, oh, actually, for one reason or another, it's just not happening in that way. It's like, okay, so now we need to do a detour. Actually, a lot of the times, I just feel that it's when you are listening to what the project needs, or what the project, because sometimes, you know, these external things happen. There's always going to be moving pieces in life. That's just how life works. You can have an idea about, oh, this is what I want to do, and the journey may not actually be the one that you've envisioned, but the end goal, the destination is the same. And it's about focusing, like, in those moments, how do you choose to respond, and how do you choose to allow this moment to like what Zaahida was saying about growth. So how can this grow you? And I think that's one of the greatest things in terms of in learning with Afrikult, is knowing that the people who we were when we started this, we're not the same people that we are today. And, you know, we've evolved, but similarly, Afrikult has evolved. Its mission has expanded, but it's also remained very focused in that widening access. But now we know we can widen access to African literatures, to knowledge of African literatures, through different mediums. And we're no longer limited to the very specific idea that we had, that we thought this was our only option. So, you know, I think it's about playing and listening, and knowing, like, if you have a core mission and you know what that mission is, it can come to you in different ways. It can happen in different ways, and the impact can still be the same, but it may not necessarily be aligned to what you initially thought it was going to be. Because initially we thought it was going to be a blog.
Yeah, I mean, same here. Me too.
Yeah.
I thought Africa and Dialogue would be a blog. I thought it would just be me working in my blog, where I'm having conversations with African storytellers. And then it just transformed into being a literary magazine. And just that recognition, it was like a real shift, where it just even shifted how I showed up in African Dialogue. And the bio that you see in African Dialogue came a couple of months later, because for me, the essence all along was that African thought, African philosophies, African experiences have been erased. And right now, where you can find them is in African literature. At least for me, that's where I used to find. I would know what's happening in Ghana through a book that I write in Ghana. That is how I access history of Africa and its people and their experiences. And that is why, for me, that was the driving force. And it was coming from even a philosophical idea, like, African thought exists, our experiences are existing in the humans themselves. So what will happen if I accessed or communicated with these humans? What will this mean? And I didn't even think it's archiving. I didn't set out to archive African thought. It's just that I wanted to know, like, on a selfish personal level, you know, it wasn't even in a, you know, like the way it is now. And the moment I did, like, by the third interview, I was like, even the first interview that I did, which was called The History and Future of Botswana Literature. And prior to that interview, I knew nothing about my own country and its literature and its history. And the professor that I interviewed gave me so much more than I could have ever expected. And it was heartbreaking for me that I grew up for many decades without ever accessing that information, and that this gentleman might transition to the next realm, and this information will transition with him. And we will always say there's no literature in Botswana, and that just, like, it just fuels this passion to say, but there's so much more. Even beyond the literature, there's also the people who are writing about this, and also what they're writing about. And many times in literature, we're writing about our world, what we're observing, right? And a lot of African literature is often centered around the politics of the country or whatever's happening. So for me, then it just evolved into just the personal desire to see that, oh my God, this could impact other people. And by the third interview, that's when it just became a big, and then my mission is I'm archiving this thing. This has not existed before, where we can access history and philosophy and thought and experiences from the people themselves, you know? And then I was like, oh, this is going to become a hub of conversations. But then it evolved to, it's so much more than conversations. For me, I when I think about African dialogue and the dialogues that we curate, they're not just conversations. That's something so much more. It's an energy I hope that people can access 50 years from now, and they can say, wow, that is what life was like in 2019, you know? That is the thing that excites me right now. Like, prior to that, I didn't start with that mission. Now that's the mission. Like this hub where you can access it 200 years from now, and you can say that's how people live. That is what their experiences were like. Because I wish I could access information on the 19th century. Now I have to hunt the internet to get that information. So that is how the expansion of the mission has been, but it's still centered around conversations, you know? So I relate.
Can I ask you, in the conversations that you've had, have there been any that have really kind of maybe steered your line of questioning in a certain direction, or helped kind of form more of what you want, when it comes to what you're doing?
Yeah, of course, definitely. As I told you guys, like, the one thing that I knew was that it's going to be free flowing. I'm not going to start. I will not plan the questions. I will figure it out. I believe that something else was driving the process of my interviews. Really, the first 4 interviews, this was my interview with Barolo Nsiboni, Benga Adesina, Lijuju Malingana Mgomboti, and Safia Elfilo. They cemented what I imagine what African dialogue is right now, really, because I was really experimenting with them, and they just gave me the liberty to do that. I didn't know, it just shaped itself, and that shaping was part me, part them. It was just how they were availing themselves and entering that space with me, that I was able to kind of like create a format of my interview that didn't exist before, you know. So it shifted me. There are some interviews that I used to come to my sister's room and was like, read this, just read this, because it will literally change me as a person. And it would change how I related to African literature and how I read it, which I think African dialogue made me a better reader, because I now paid attention to things that before I was just reading for the sake of like enjoyment, but now I'm seeing so much more. You know, it made me a better writer. Can you give us an example?
Sorry, can you give us an example of where that was very clear to you, like when you saw that shift in your reading habit?
I think in the year 2017, that's when I read a lot of African literature with the idea that I'm going to interview this person. Right. So while before I would just read for the sake of I'm enjoying this. You know, I do think that this has been a good thing, and sometimes not a great thing, because sometimes I don't enjoy things now because I read as an interviewer. You know, it's a difference. And I pay attention more to things, to the nuances of what is being said. And it's not even intentional. It's just like now it's as if I've been trained. You know, so for a lot of people, like my background is psychology, right? And without even meaning to, I'm always psychoanalyzing. It's because I've been trained this way that any other time I'm analyzing a thing at a psychological level. So now, even as an interviewer, I read anything with that background of what is the question? What are they trying to do? Where is the stream of consciousness of this writing, of this poem? You know, like, I don't have a specific moment where I have that shift, like, oh my God, I don't read the same way, but I know that happened somewhere in 2017 when I was interviewing a lot of people. What about you guys? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was going to say like that resonates again because we've had in the different work that we've done, we've had various interactions with maybe different poets, writers, academics, and speaking to them and kind of hearing their take on what we do, I think has really contributed to how we've decided to grow Afrikult and kind of where we can push and steer in good directions. Because obviously like the way we think about what we're doing is very different to people on the outside who kind of see and like, oh wow, you do this. Have you thought about this? And we're like on the inside, oh no, we haven't. Maybe that would be good. And thinking about being a couple of steps ahead, but then also realizing that the people who you're engaging with might not see that. So the kind of, I guess, the insider outsider and being able to listen on a level and take things in is something that I'm quite interested in how we can grow.
So one thing that was unexpected is the connection that I made with African writers. I didn't think it would happen because that has also shifted the growth of African dialogue. For example, the first book interview that I did, that was with the support of Benga Disna. The thought came to me, but I didn't know if I could do it. And he was like guiding me through that process, you know. And yeah, I'm always so grateful like that other people who are also part of this and they're like cheerleading me. I cannot say how much I appreciate I hope I say his name right, Otto Sirieze, the deputy editor of Brittle Paper, and Jennifer of, oh my God. Yeah, I will remember what the magazine is, good God. But they've just been so instrumental that some people where I wanted to grow something, but I didn't know how to grow it. And I would just out and they would just give me, this is how to do it. And it's just been so powerful. I've also had Boise J or Writivism, who's just been also instrumental, and he introduced me to my mentor, Emmanuel Ejima, who has helped me expand.
Oh, Emmanuel is your mentor? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and he helped me release some of the guilt that you have as a curator, where you feel like you have to do everything and you're like afraid to ask for support. He's like, no, allow people in. And now African Dialogue has like 7 support teams, like interns. We have an intern program. That was because I had these writers coming in and giving me guidance and recommendations that have just made the job so much easier. So I'm always so grateful for the community that African Dialogue introduced me to and just being supported by the community.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well, because there is a real danger to work in silos and to be very insular and very protective and territorial about your work as well. But when you realize that what you're doing is adding to the community, that ultimately you're also part of the community. So there are people who can also add to what you are doing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's a real beauty when you actually relinquish that sense of like, you know, working with this kind of individualistic mindset and you know, the fear of asking for support, because it's this fear of being seen that you need help, right? But actually for us to do what we do, we need the community, and to recognize that the community is there and that you rightfully belong. And I think that is also another thing that, you know, sometimes I know for me personally, I can struggle with, where I may feel like an imposter in certain instances, but then I have to really check myself and be like, well, actually, I'm not doing this for like, you know, the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to connect with people. And for me to be able to connect with people, I need to reach out to people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of the important things that I've constantly had to learn, is that everyone is trying. Everyone wants to feel included. Everyone wants to find a community, a space where they belong. And instead of having any kind of judgment, or instead of having any kind of like territorial mindset, recognizing that if we all just open the doors, if we all just let each other in, then that sense of imposter syndrome and that sense of feeling like you are ostracized from the community, it wouldn't be there as much. And sometimes I do find that within the African literary space, it can be quite exclusion. Probably not going to say the word right, but like exclusionary. Yeah. And that's the thing that I also struggle with sometimes, because everyone is contributing to it on one level or another, and the same thing that we're kind of like against in terms of having like academic elitist institutions hoarding all this, you know, rich knowledge and resources of African literature, and, you know, fighting against that and trying to bring it to the community, bringing it into schools that would not have access to this information, to then being part of a African literary community, which can also seem quite elitist.
Yeah,
I think sometimes, because you have, there seems to be a hierarchy at times, and I think that can be a very painful thing, because the thing you're fighting against is the thing you're now witnessing and engaging with, or not engaging with, because they're not even letting you in the first place. You know? Yeah. So it's really interesting. This whole thing around gatekeepers is something I'm also very conscious of, because I recognize that Afrikult has also built a reputation, and it's built its claimed stake in this within this community, and there's a responsibility that comes with that. And there's a responsibility to engage and to not feel that, oh, well, it's just our work and we're just going to do things our way and we're just going to do it for our own, you know, because ultimately we're all trying to achieve the same thing. You know, we want Africans' voices we want it to be amplified, you know, against the mainstream. So anyway, that was a bit of a ramble, but
no, I mean,
I think that's one of the challenging things I face within this kind of space.
Yeah, sometimes. No. I definitely resonate with imposter syndrome. My very first year, there was a lot of conversation about me being a literary expert, and I just no, I don't have a degree in literature. So every time someone calls it a literary magazine, I felt the pressure to perform as a literary expert, you know, and which was not something that I was. And I was really a young writer. I'm still a young writer. I don't have a lot of work out there in the world, you know. So sometimes people will just say the same and create this weight for me where I'm supposed to know. And I'm like, I don't know. I just know how to interview people, but that's just it. You know, and I used to just feel very small. Also, the process for my work is that I'm reaching out to writers, and many of them are often established. And in the beginning, the one thing that I didn't expect is that people would say no. You know, especially my heroes. You know, they will not respond to my emails. It used to really get me in a bit of like a dark cloud for a moment there. And just my experience as a literary interviewer, and this is it's a new role, I think, in Africa. Like, there are not that many people who call themselves literary interviewers. So I think that a lot of people have expectations on what that means. And I had experiences where I really felt small. I really felt like I wasn't contributing, either from an experience of someone who came into the space and just dismissed the work, dismissed how I'm contributing, you know. And it was just, it would be really, really painful, because sometimes you'll come for someone who I look up to and I love your work, but do you also see that we're all working for the same thing? I believe that literary interviewers should be part of this. I remember talking to Emmanuel and we were talking about how it's a genre, actually. It's something to be recognized as an important part of this curation of African literature. We have writers, but we also need interviewers. We also need editors and curators, and it's so easy to forget the editors, the interviewers, the people who are busy marketing your books and sharing and reviewing your books. It's so easy to just dismiss us. And it's sometimes so heartbreaking because we want to promote you, you know, but how forthcoming are people with wanting to work with us at that level, but also respecting that this work that we do is valid and it's contributing to the evolution of African literature. I've had instances where for me, I felt like it doesn't matter whether I'm there or not, you know, just from personal experiences with people. But of course, the majority is that there's so much love and so much support for Africa and Gaamangwe and what I do. That's the collective energy. But I've had those instances where, I feel like I'm imposter. So I resonate with that.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important to recognize that people have the right to say no as well.
Yeah.
Like, even if you have like a really great idea and you can see the benefit of it, you can see the value of it, you can see the potential impact it will have, sometimes it just doesn't align with other people's timelines, it doesn't align with their own vision for what it is that they're doing, and that's okay. And I think when it comes to dealing with rejection on various levels, it's about understanding that it's not that time for you. Does that make sense? Or that's not the project that you should be working on.
It's also not personal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also not personal because everyone's working on their own timelines. You know, they're working on their own projects and they've got their own agendas, you know, like what they want to achieve. So I think it's also important to recognize like when someone's
Okay, we're back.
Internet. We're grateful for it, but it can also be very fickle. But someone can say no, and that doesn't mean it's the end of your project. And it also doesn't mean that no could also just mean a not yet. It could turn into a yes later on.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things in learning to be flexible with it. And like we were saying before, this whole thing about actually surrendering to the project and expanding yourself in ways that it will feel uncomfortable a lot of the times, and that's what growth requires from us. It requires discomfort a lot of the times, but for a project to really be fulfilled, there are always going to be moving pieces, and it will never ever ever be exactly how you envisioned it to be in the beginning. If anything, it will be better. That's what I strongly believe, because you'll work with the people who want to make it happen, instead of fighting for relationships and for people to be involved or for certain aspects to work and it's just not working. And then you do take it personal in that sense. That failure becomes a lot harder to swallow.
Yeah. And now thinking about your highest moments, like oh my God, I'm so grateful I am doing this, and then taking it to like the hardest things that you guys have experienced curating Africa. What comes up for you, Zaahida?
I think for me, our highest moment was last year when we got to do, we won some funding to do workshops, to do some research and development in 2 schools in the UK, workshopping our workshops. And this for me was really fulfilling because it was exactly kind of what Marcelle has said. We'd applied for this funding before and had a no, so that was quite a knock. And then being able to kind of pick ourselves up and try again and to be successful was really significant. And I think it came at a really important time where it was just Marcelle and I, we were ready for like the next step to do something kind of bigger that we were answering only to ourselves, not kind of working in partnership in the way that we were kind of managing everything. We're working in partnership in delivering things, but the actual management of it was all us. So that was definitely my highest moment. And whenever it makes me want to do more.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is one of my highest moments because it was Marcelle and I who were managing the project, working in partnership and delivering it, but the actual management was just us. I think one of my most challenging moments has been when it did kind of shrink to just me and Marcelle, when our other co-founder, Henry, when he had to step down. That was really difficult because a lot of emotions came up, and this was kind of one of the points where we were pushed to think, okay, well, are we going to stop too? Are we going to keep going? And we both went through different emotions with this. But I think underneath we're both like, no, we want to keep going. So yeah, that was a challenge. I mean, there were loads of other challenges, but that's the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah. Do you have a different one, Marcelle, or it's still the same thing?
Do you know, because I'm not gonna lie, while Zaahida was talking, I just kept thinking, like, what is my highest and my most challenging? I think maybe I would say my highest. And this is like adding from what Zaahida said, because last year was an amazing year for us. What we're able to do with schools, working with more schools, and piloting the material that we've worked really hard to put together, and just seeing that transformation and seeing that impact, that direct impact, that was really important. And we love working with young people as well, so they'll always be like in the top 10. But I do think maybe the highest moment is, I don't know, is it the highest? One of the most favorite moments for me, let's put it that way, was when we presented at the African Translation Symposium the first year, when we launched Afrikult on the 1st of July 2014. And we basically did a presentation on Nonsisi Mgwetho, who has been very much at the center of a lot of the work that we do, and who we discovered through our masters. And having, oh my gosh, I can't believe her name has now escaped me. But basically, one of our friends, we had asked her to present the poem in Xhosa. And it was just like, I think in that moment, it was the first thing that we had done publicly. It was seeing all the hard work that we had put together, and now recognizing, oh, this is gonna be a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think just thinking about that moment, that very, very proud moment, and when people stood and they clapped, I think that promise of what Afrikult was going to be was seen then. And even though we don't do conference presentations anymore in the way that we were originally deliberately trying to do, I just think it was such a precious moment to have experienced that. And to have had that performance, and to see Nonsisi's work shared with a wider audience. And I'm just paying homage to her. Sorry, she was a South African Xhosa poet in the early 1900s. I think the most challenging for me on a very personal note I can't think of a very specific one, but there have been times where it's been this constant questioning of, when it comes to the sustainability of Afrikult. And, I think a lot of curators face this, or facilitators face this, where you're really passionate about the thing that you do, but you're fueled by that passion. And that passion at some point will dip. And if you aren't, being remunerated for your time, you're not getting funds to kind of support, you're obviously doing everything on the side. And so that's extra energy that you're expending on the project. So I think there's definitely been times where that's been a real challenge for me, because I look at the value of what we're doing, what it's worth monetarily, and then look at we're mainly doing this for free.
Yeah.
And that can be really challenging. It's always rewarding, obviously, when you see the impact of your work. And like Zaahida said, last year she really led on getting the application in for the school workshops, which was incredible, because we were able to be properly compensated for our time. Not as properly, obviously, because the hours you spend, but it's a constant battle. And that's us here in the UK. So sorry, that was kind of a long-winded.
That's okay. Yeah.
And what about yourself, Joy?
Well, my highest moment was releasing the first issue of African Dialogue. as I mentioned from the beginning, I always just imagined that it would just be me, but somehow African Dialogue just grew. And one moment I was thinking, what would it be like to just have other people in that interviews and have that as a book, that people can download and read. And I wanted, because the thing about us writers is that we're often so forgotten, like, let's say taking film, for example, everyone remembers the actors, but never the writer. And even when you see magazines, you just see, models and celebrities who are like usually actors and whatnot, never the writer. So I just wanted to create something that can make writers be this interesting bunch that you want to read everything that they've written. So I wanted to make this visually appealing issue. And this is like literally my first year. It was released on the anniversary of African Dialogue, 1 year in, and it was just, the curation of it was interesting, just the support, the people who sent in their interviews, brilliant interviews. It's just like, I remember that moment, reading the interview with Professor Taban that was sent in, and I just couldn't believe it. Like, it was sent in by 2 professors, and I'm like, they sent this interview to African. I think that was also my moment of realizing, oh my God, this is a big deal, Joy. People recognize the value of what you're doing, and they want to be part of this movement of archiving African voices, right? And just how it all came out, and just the response from people was deeply, deeply affirming for me. And yeah, I've had also other great moments, but that one always stands out because I think it felt like, oh, I've arrived. I'm really part of the African literary community. I'm contributing something. And yeah. And then my lowest moment was last year. So the person that I said I dreamt of interviewing, her name is Muta Diana Chirupenda. And in 2013, and in this first issue that I just spoke about was visually directed by Musa, the same person that I first interviewed, right? Yeah. And unfortunately, she passed on last year. So she was the visual director of African Dialogue. So she transitioned to the ancestral realm last year, sometime this time, actually, July 5. Yeah. And it was just a surprise, obviously. She just had a headache, and that was it. She had a headache, went to sleep, but that was it, And it was just deeply shocking for me because she passed on when we were about to do our second issue. We were planning our second issue. And yeah, it hit me in ways that I never knew before. I've never experienced grief like that. Yeah. Because this was a very, very important person in my journey in African literature, in conversation. She's the first person I ever interviewed. So I think that it took me 9 months to be able to do an interview after losing her. The energy, I think I didn't even open my emails for like a month because I didn't want to see anything related to African Dialogue. The grief was really unbelievable. I didn't know what to do. I needed to find even another visual director for the second issue, which is still not out. And I haven't been able to find someone. And I think part of me didn't really want to do the work of finding a replacement, but somehow it feels like a betrayal or something like that. So I'm still going through the grief process, basically. And it just shifted the energy for African Dialogue. It shifted how I showed up. And I'm only now coming up because I shared with Emmanuel Iduma, and he recommended Joy get help. And so I created the African Dialogue internship program, which has been life-saving for me. Because I believe in the mission of African Dialogue. I don't think I would ever stop believing in that mission, but I couldn't really get myself, my physical body, to do the work because it was very deeply triggering for me. But I found this amazing interviewers who were just like, we're ready to come and support you. And we've just been doing brilliant work. And now I mean, I love the program and I cannot wait for the next people. Like I've been now doing the part of like training people on the interview and guiding them in different projects that I'm doing now. And it's just like I have a different role now, which I absolutely love. And I love the evolution that came from the pain that I experienced at a very deep level like that. But yeah, that is the one thing I never expected will happen within this work.
Yeah. And you know, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I remember.
Ooh.
Are you okay?
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm good.
No. And I remember like, because you had mentioned that to me earlier this year when we were starting to think about doing this conversation. And I think one of the questions that, and you've actually probably answered it, not probably, you have answered it, was how did you make the decision to continue? Because something like grief, it's deeply personal process. Like everyone, you know, grieves differently. And especially losing someone close to you, someone close to you, someone you have a close relationship with, working relationship with, someone who's also close to like your age group, and there is that survivor's guilt as well that comes up. And what was the moment for you where you knew that, okay, I need to continue to push through and make this happen?
Well, this will sound strange, but she came into my dream and told me, girl, please continue. Do not be crazy. Literally, I did not transition so that you can come and give up. And the funny thing is, our last conversation, it's like she knew. You know, people always say that. She talked about how, you know, we really have to utilize all of our gifts in this lifetime. And obviously she wasn't, like, she was talking about herself, but she was telling me, Joy, you know, we're so talented. We really need to do all the things that we love. Like we will not die without doing that TV series and this and this. And she said this to me, and I remember this very vividly. And that was our last conversation. And every time when I think about, also, I've never really thought about quitting African Dialogue. I mean, during this process, but I just remember I don't have the energy. Like, can I take a break? Like, I felt like, can I say I need 1 month, 1 year of a break? I wanted to say that, you know, just to see, but not to ever quit, because that mission of African Dialogue is my life mission. Really. It's like in everything that I do, I'm always doing conversations, you know, so I can never run away from that. But I just wanted a break. Like, I just wanted to not interview anyone. But she came to me a couple of months later in a dream. I'm a vivid, active dreamer, so I always remember my dreams. So I remember it very well. And she had a very calm conversation with me that, you know, of course, all the things that you're given as gifts are to be utilized. And you don't just give up because I transitioned into the next. Like, she spoke like that, like, because I transitioned. That does not make sense. And yeah, and it doesn't mean that the next day I was like, yeah, I'm back, I'm interviewing people. I did my third interview just the last couple of weeks, like 2 weeks back. My third interview, and that is like very, very slow for me because I used to do 50 interviews in the year, you know. But I just gave myself the space, and I'm giving myself the space, and because now, you know, having other interviewers helping me really helps to not feel guilty, like I'm letting African Dialogue down. But now I'm enjoying the new role that I'm in, and I still see it as serving the mission, just it is in a different way. And as I was telling you, now I'm very much drawn to video because it doesn't really take a lot. The way that I used to do interviews would be like, I would do this and have to transcribe it myself, which is very tedious, and But now I love the idea that I can do this conversation and just post it and people can still access it, which is why I think about what is the next step for African dialogue. It is having more of these conversations that are easy, as you're saying, that can be accessed in different ways. You can read it, you can listen to it, you can watch it. That is interesting for me and doesn't take much time for me because after this we're done, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that also then feeds into like your legacy, I guess, this experience, couched in quite a difficult emotions. By the sounds of it, feeds into like what you want to leave and what you're building towards.
Yeah. So now the thing that is exciting for me, last month, Ngateko Masinga, who is one of the interns, she's the interviewer for poetry, did a book series for the Brunel shortlisted poets.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a big moment for me because I remember doing that series myself. It's the first book interview I did in 2017. And just now being the publisher and helping her as she was curating it, it just gave me like an affirmation of where African dialogue is going. It's no longer about me. I don't want people to think African dialogue, that's Joy Mahani. Whereas people know me, that's how people have always thought of African dialogue. I now envision like a hub where different interviewers can come and have that interviews be published. One day it will just really dissolve to it being a hub of conversation, and it's not about me because people often think I am African dialogue because I've done a lot of interviews specifically for African dialogue. So I want us to develop the literary interview as a moving archive, a very active, powerful, profound element of African literature and how we see African literature. And people now dreaming of being literary interviewed. I mean, I grew up dreaming of being a poet. I never knew that there was something called a literary interview. Now I hope people can start dreaming of that as a thing that they can become, like that's a thing, That is the legacy that I hope African dialogue leaves. People dreaming of participating in literature in this way, people wanting to participate in the process of interviews with each other. I love the idea of one day a poet interviewing another poet. Like that's where I'm hoping people will get to. If I can think of your favorite writer, interviewing your other favorite writer and having that in African dialogue. That is like my dream now. And I will just be doing the curating. Of course, I will always do interviews, but I hope that more people can get into interviewing as a genre. It is a genre I couldn't do. Yeah.
And I think.
What about you guys? What is the legacy for Africa?
You go first. No, you go first.
I guess I just wanted to also just say that, like, going back to your point about your friend visiting you in the dream, I think that's so powerful, and it's also really beautiful because it's still feeding into like what it like you not giving up on the thing that you both started, but also still feeding into the legacy that you'd like to leave. So I think that's really beautiful, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. But I guess for me personally, I would love legacy Afrikult leaves is it creates more space for people to engage with African literature by doing workshops, by doing by finding other creative ways for people to engage and to celebrate African literature, and that it's not just held within academic kind of spaces, but people can go into different communities and actually share the work. And I think the legacy that I want Afrikult to create is to have that, to show the blueprint of that, where you mix, academic kind of work with, I don't know, like with fun, I guess, but also making it accessible. And I think that's the thing that I strongly desire, is the accessibility side of it. But also, I would love that we're able to create a very strong community. Like, you know what you were saying about the hub and the interviewers, that really resonated with me, because, you know, it would be great if we were able to have people actually join the Afrikult community and go out and do the work. Because, you know, it's so much for just the two of us to do. And I strongly believe in like creating different opportunities, because I remember where I was at when I first started thinking about doing something, and I was at a very, 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 very low point in my life, and I had like this love for African literature, but there were no jobs going, and I just felt very limited in what I could do. And, you know, in Afrikult, we basically created this opportunity for us. So I'm hoping that if we do go down that line, that we'll be able to create opportunities for others to do what they love with the knowledge that they've acquired.
Yeah, I agree with Marcelle. I think accessibility is really important, and representation. So I think with Africa, I would particularly like for African literatures to be more representative, certainly here and abroad, because you often get these elitist little circles or pockets where everyone knows a lot, but it doesn't filter down. And I think it's so important, not just, you know, for Africans, but for everyone to kind of understand different cultures. And because Africa is so rich in so many ways, it's really important that people know. And I think literature is a wonderful way to understand. So I think making it more accessible would be a legacy I'm very passionate about achieving.
I'm also really passionate about seeing, like, especially like within the context of the UK. And I said this at the very beginning. I remember when one of our mentors at the time, Wangui Wagoro, asked, what is it that you want to, like, what is it that you want to achieve with this organization? And I said, to see every Black kid in the UK to hold up, you know, an African book, let's say an African book title, say for instance, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, because that's the default that we always, we go back to a lot in the West. But, you know, holding up Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, and to say they know this author, they know this writing, and they know African literature exists. Because currently, in a lot of the young minds that we interact with, they don't even know that Africans write novels. So, and that was my experience. So I'd love to see that shift happen. And whether Afrikult, I believe we're definitely part of the community in making that shift happen. But, you know, and I don't think we'll be able to just do it by ourselves. But that's something that's the symbol I always go back to when I think, why do we do what we do? And it's thinking about future generations and building that self-esteem, particularly for young Black people in the UK, because they're not taught it in schools. So, yeah.
My last one is, I also really want people to think storytellers are really cool. That is it. I swear to you guys, I just want them to say, oh my God, what a cool person. The way we think that musicians and filmmakers are cool, I want people to feel the same way about writers. Like I want, because, you know, the psychology of sales and why people buy books or why people buy music is also attributed to what is cool, like right now in the mainstream. And I just want Africans to want to access African literature, because I think that people don't know because they don't want to, they're not interested. You know, so I'm interested in shifting that energy so that people know that what we do is so cool. Oh my God, the coolest thing ever. Yeah. So that is what I'm interested in right now.
No, that's really beautiful and vivid.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining me. This was such a good conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Wow. I'm very excited for the manifestation of all your dreams, because, you know, you guys told me Marcelle sees things, so they happen. So I cannot wait. Now that you've said it, it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, but no, congratulations on everything that you're doing with African Dialogue. You know, the grit, the resilience, the love, the energy, everything that you put into it it doesn't go unnoticed. And, you know, and you're doing important work. Archiving is so crucial. So thank you so much for what you're doing, Joy. And thank you for taking it seriously as well. Like, you don't treat it like just a plaything, you know, you take it seriously. And that's why the quality of your work is so high.
No.
So, yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us. We would love to know more from you guys. What you thought, what your thoughts are, any ideas, any questions for myself, for Zaahida, for me. We're so available to answer you guys anytime. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.